Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into Python's for loop, which is honestly one of the most important tools you'll ever use in the language. We're going to break it all down right from the ground up. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and subscribe to this channel for more explainers just like this one. All right, let's jump right in.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics, the foundation of how loops work. Then, we'll see how you can use them on all kinds of different data. After that, we'll get a little fancier and learn how to control the loop's flow, use some really cool helper functions, and then we'll wrap it all up with some pro tips and common mistakes to avoid.
All right, first things first, the foundation. Before we can build anything cool, we have to understand how this thing actually, thinks. If you get this part, everything else is going to click into place so much faster.
So what is a for loop really? The best way to think about it is like a little robot worker. You hand it a to-do list, in Python we call that a sequence, and you give it one single task. The loop then just goes down that list, item by item, and does that exact same task on everything, automatically. It's that simple. And this is the four-step dance that every single for loop does. First, it grabs the very first item on the list. Second, it runs whatever code you told it to run. Third, it says, okay, next, and moves to the second item. And fourth, it just repeats that process over and over until it runs out of items. That simple cycle is the engine driving the whole thing.
Okay, so we've got the basic pattern down. The obvious next question is, what kind of lists or sequences can we even give this thing? Well, as you're about to see, the for loop is incredibly flexible and works on all the major Python data types you'll be using.
Let's start with the easiest one, a string. When you give a for loop a string like Python, it just sees it as a sequence of characters. So it grabs the P, prints it, grabs the Y, prints it, and so on, all the way to the end. See? Super simple.
And check this out. For a list of numbers, the code looks almost identical. This is what makes for loops so powerful. It doesn't really care if it's letters in a word or numbers in a list. It just sees a sequence and knows exactly what to do.
Now, this one, you're going to see this everywhere. This is probably the most common way to use a for loop. What if you just want to do something a specific number of times, like, say, 5 times? Use the range function. Range 5 just creates a sequence for you on the fly, from 0 up to 4. It's perfect for when you just need to repeat an action.
Loops can even handle more complex stuff, like dictionaries. The trick here is using that special .items method. It tells the loop, hey, for each entry, I want you to grab both the key and the value. That's why we can use 2 variables there, key and value, to catch both pieces of info on each pass. It's incredibly useful.
All right, so going through a whole list is great. But what if you don't want to? What if you find what you're looking for early, or you want to skip over certain items? Well, that's exactly what flow control is for. This lays it out perfectly. Break is your emergency brake. The second your code hits a break, the loop is done. It stops immediately. Continue is different. It's more like saying, skip this one. It just stops the current run-through and jumps right back to the top to grab the very next item. Now here's a neat little feature that not a lot of beginners know about, the else clause on a for loop. This little block of code here will only run if the loop finishes its entire job naturally without ever hitting a break. You can think of it as a success block. It tells you, yep, we went through everything on the list.
Okay, we've got the basics. We've got flow control. Now let's level up and make our loops even more powerful. Python gives us some fantastic built-in functions that help solve common looping problems in a really clean, elegant way.
So here's a situation I guarantee you've run into. You're looping through a list and you have the item, but you also need to know what position it's in. Is it the first, second, or third item? How do you get that index number? The answer is enumerate. This function is your best friend. You just wrap your list with it, and on every single pass, it hands you back 2 things, the index number and the item itself. It's so much cleaner than trying to keep track of a counter variable yourself. And what about this? What if you have 2 lists, like names and scores, and you need to process them together? That's what zip is for. It takes the first item from each list and pairs them up, then the second from each. It's like zipping up a jacket. It brings both sides together perfectly.
All right, we're in the home stretch. This section is super important. We're going to cover the common mistakes that trip up pretty much everyone at the beginning, and I'll show you how to avoid them so you can write much better, safer code. Here are the big 4. Forgetting that colon at the end, that's an instant error. Messing up your indentation? Python won't run it.
Using the wrong variable name inside, that'll crash your code. But that last one is the one that causes the most confusing bugs.
So here's the golden rule. You should never, ever change a list while you are looping directly over it. Think about it. It's like trying to remove steps from a staircase while you're walking down it. The loop gets confused, it loses its place, and you end up with really weird, unpredictable results.
Luckily, the fix is so simple, but it's brilliant. See that little colon? That tiny slice notation tells Python, hey, don't loop over the original list. Make a quick copy and loop over that instead. This gives your loop a stable list to work with, while you are totally free to modify the original one safely.
Okay, let's look at one last pro tip. A super common task is to create a new list based on some other data. This is the classic way to do it. You make an empty list, you loop, you do a calculation, and you .append the result each time. This works, it's perfectly fine, but there's a more advanced, more Pythonic way. This is called a list comprehension. It does the exact same thing as the last slide, but all in one clean, readable line. It basically reads like plain English. Give me a list of x squared for every x in my range. This is the kind of elegant code that Python is famous for. And that's a great place to wrap up. We've gone from the core mechanics all the way to some really pro-level techniques. You now have a really solid grasp of Python's for loop. The absolute best thing you can do now is just open up a code editor and start playing. Try it out on strings, lists, use enumerate, and just see what you can build. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found this helpful, subscribe to this channel for more.